All right. Thanks a lot for joining, everyone. We've got a great panel here. As Megan mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about the digital wallet revolution. To introduce our panelists, we have Harmeen from Citi, Leon from Elsewhen, Cillian from Tecton, and then Megan, who just talked a little bit. And we'll get first into their backgrounds. They'll tell you about what they've been up to, and then we'll jump into the questions. So, Megan, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, sure. So my background is all out of financial technology. I originally started my career in Silicon Valley at a company called Intuit. They make lots of different financial products, like predominantly accounting and payroll. And then went to a smaller scale up called Zero, also in the same space, really looking at how to innovate using a platform, how to connect accountants with small business owners from a different perspective through a series of APIs to enable a fuller small business offering. I then got a talent visa to move here to the UK to help start Starling Bank as their chief platform officer. And I'm assuming everyone knows Starling Bank, so I won't really belabor that in here. So I did that for a while and then went to Barclays as their head of digital strategy and their chief product officer, leading the build of a new core banking engine for Barclays UK, and then was the chairperson for the UK Tech and Cyber Board at UK Finance during that period. And now I'm the CEO of my own AI-driven wealth tech startup called Caywood.
Hard one to follow. Hi, I'm Harmeen from Citygroup, work in the Chief Data Office, predominantly looking at deployment of AI use cases across the bank, varying from corporate, institutional, from foreign exchange, trade, all types of different AI deployment.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Leon. I'm the Chief Product and Strategy Officer at Elsewhen. My background is in software engineering. Elsewhen is a digital consultancy, and we work with AI, generative AI, and Agentic AI. We're based here. We're in booth 102. If you want to come later and say hi, happy to be here.
Thank you. So my name is Cillian O'Shea. So I lead go-to-market for Tecton. My background is in software sales and customer support. Tecton is a feature platform. Our founders built Uber's AI machine learning platform. And then they realized in scaling that the hard part of the models is the models are only as good as the context that you give them. So we're a US startup, and I lead, sales, go-to-market for marketing, customer support, post-sale support as well.
Great. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then we'll jump into the questions. So I've been at Coinbase for about 5 years. I lead our AI product team there. Obviously, it's a big trading platform, but one of our other offerings is a wallet solution where you can take custody of your own crypto and then do a bunch of different things within the on-chain ecosystem. And so, there's lots of implications, lots of talk about this area, and so definitely very excited to get more into it. So we'll start by talking about enterprises and institutions and sort of the adoption that we're seeing there. For that, I'd love to maybe start with Harmeen and then get the panel's thoughts.
Okay. So digital wallets, we've been at this for quite a while, and we've moved from theory to integration. With regards to the things that we're most interested in from an institutional perspective are things like treasury management, cross-border payments, so making things a lot easier, and tokenization of assets so that we can add liquidity and extra investment opportunities into the market. In terms of implementation, I guess we focus more on API deployment or getting rid of card rails. But from a end consumer digital wallet, what does it look like? What's it going to be? Is it going to be this huge marketplace? Or, what is the role of the bank? I think we've taken quite a risk-averse stance on it. So we're not at that end techie cool stuff, which is probably what these guys do here. We're looking at risk, privacy, digital identity. There's no sort of generic framework anywhere. So how is this all going to work? How are the digital identities going to work across different countries? We have to think about all those boring things and take sort of a backseat on the cool side that he'll probably talk about.
Yeah, feel free if anybody else has anything there. Cillian, you've been working with enterprises directly at Tecton, so I'm curious, when you get more into like that tech side of things, what are maybe some of the things that people are interested in or hurdles to adoption?
Yeah, so I think digital wallets sit at this intersection between, identity, money, and real-time access, and that makes them highly susceptible to fraud and risk. Um, so, but typically that we see that, some of there's other challenges around that as well. So, as you mentioned, cross-border payments, making sure that you comply with the regulations for those different countries. KYC and AML needs a high degree of traceability and governance. And then, digital wallets have a complex tech stack as well across devices, third-party APIs, banks and merchants. So that adds a huge amount of kind of complexity. And one of the ways that we're seeing, specifically, we work a lot with AI and ML teams, and kind of AI kind of falls into two buckets. You've either got products that have got AI built in that help to improve, the service that they deliver. And I also see the other bucket as being products and services that enable teams to be able to build their own AI. And that's kind of where Tecton falls in. So where we see teams is looking at leveraging real-time and streaming data to be able to improve the services and the predictions that they're able to be able to deliver through ML. Data that's less than a second old is a lot more valuable than data that's 2 or 3 or 4 minutes old. And there's a number of operational challenges that they come up when they try to do that. And they're some of the things that we help with.
Yeah, it's super interesting. One of the things that we work on a lot at Coinbase is around fraud, ATO, and other sorts of like KYC, AML type of stuff. And so I think what you're talking about, like with streaming data and getting like really fresh models and all of that, is like going to be pretty critical to being able to have digital wallets operate in a sort of user-friendly way and safe, compliant way as well. Great. And then Leon, love to get your thoughts too, from like just you're working constantly with enterprises. You probably see a lot of different use cases. What have been the things that sort of resonating? And I know that you've had some thoughts on like maybe some of the hurdles that you're seeing. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
So, our typical client is an enterprise client. In financial services, we work with traditional organizations. And the idea of the digital wallet is kind of stuck in between the worlds of traditional finance and the crypto ecosystem, or the DeFi. And, banks that have the customers and have an app, which is kind of like a wallet, they find it difficult to engage with some of the more alternative sides of the ecosystem. And I think within the crypto space, there's no one big winner that owns the customer. And Coinbase is probably the closest to that. Yeah. But still, like when you think about, and MetaMask, which is the kind of crypto wallet leader, still a fairly niche. I don't know how many people use the MetaMask or have a MetaMask just in the audience. This is not a crypto conference, but it would be interesting. Here we go. Is that complying?
Personal news.
So it's like the idea of the digital wallet, I think, has been, so Elsewhen's been around for over a decade doing digital work, and financial services is one of our key areas. And, the idea of a wallet or a centralized place for payments that is going to be a kind of like a super app of payments has been described and talked about, and lots of different players wanted to own that. I'm sure Starling wanted to own that at some point, but we're still not there. So I think that's one of the key challenges, is like, how do you actually get the people to it? And as soon as you grow, and probably Starling went through that to a certain scale, you start to meet stuff that Citibanks meets, and same with Coinbase. As soon as Coinbase got into the markets and got the compliance, all of that starts to become a lot more difficult. So yeah. I think the ideas are there. There's some great ideas around identity and combining traditional finance and digital finance, and having your crypto assets and the digital dollar or pound. Mm-hmm. But who actually going to have the consumer to be able to do that? Yeah. I think it's that's the big challenge, and I still don't see that really a winner emerging. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to segue from that. Yeah, so at Starling, whenever we started out, if you rewind back to 2016 when we were first building, our first initiative around digital wallets was quite simple, which was to actually integrate with the Apple digital wallet. We were Apple or iOS only to begin with, and no bank had done in-app provisioning for cards yet. So it was a simple thing, but we wanted to make it so you could open a bank account in less than 3 minutes from your phone after downloading from the App Store, immediately provision a card to Apple Pay and be spending in less than 5 minutes. So that was like the simple kind of like take that we had. And then at the same time, we were building this full set of open APIs to integrate with external companies. But that also meant that with open banking and PSD2, we had an opportunity to what you said is to try to be that wallet to aggregate others in. And a lot of banks started to look at that. Like, how can, payments be the kind of killer open banking feature? And there's still a lot of work to go on that side. I think where I've seen in the most recent years, the digital wallet evolution from an institutional perspective was from my role at UK Finance, the topic about 2 years ago turned to CBDCs because the government, HMRC, put forth this, you guys have potentially seen it, this like 109-page dossier about how they had shifted their perspective. They felt that the UK needs a centralized digital currency. The reason for that is if we look back over the past 20 years, currency used to predominantly be issued by the central bank. And the central bank's function is to create economic stability. And they do that through the issuance of money into the markets. And they no longer could do that because money is now predominantly digital. They can't issue cash in the way that they used to be able to. So most cash in circulation, 97%, is issued by the commercial banks, people like Barclays, through lending. And so they want to kind of regain that kind of economic power and responsibility that the central bank has around economic stability. And so they want to create a CBDC to do that. But then the question has arisen, like, who will be the wallet for that? So I think a lot of the conversations around digital wallets is, it's, the questions that, have been discussed here around how do we enable security, the right KYC, cross-border payments, making that secure. But then there's these other institutional and governmental questions that we also have to look at as banks. And that actually, because the time horizons to appropriately respond to that, given the kind of initiative is set, I think by 2030, the work really has to start now to start to prepare for it. So that's where a lot of the mobilization has been from my experience.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. That's a great kind of segue more into the kind of consumer side of things. You mentioned stablecoin, CBDCs, open banking. I think a number of these things have been talked about for quite a while. And Leon, you mentioned the super app and how we may or may not have something like that. I'd love to hear like maybe observations with what you think, where you think this market is headed, specifically when it comes to the consumer, what the benefits are to them. And then, maybe we can just jump as well into some of the sort of hurdles that we're seeing as well.
Yeah, I think back to my point, I still think we're really in crystallizing stage of this whole area. So I went last week, so it's not going to plug in another event when you are at that event, but I went to Money 2020 last week, which is a fintech conference. And, everybody's talking about the idea of a stable coin. And if somebody's not familiar with the idea of a stable coin, is basically as Bitcoin became very, very erratic and unpredictable, there was this idea that emerged of creating a digital coin that is backed by an actual currency. So you have Tether and USDC, which just actually opened up on the New York Stock Exchange and popped 160% because it's a thing. USDC is used a lot. So basically, that's a digital coin that is backed by actual currency, and that allows you to have this stable baseline on which you can build other financial products in the DeFi ecosystem. So, last week everybody talked about the stable coins, but again, where is it going to go? Where are we going to hold them? Who's going to be holding them? So countries like the UK are prominence of central bank coins that are going to be issued by the bank and potentially not as decentralized and anarchic as some of the crypto bros wanted to be. And then you have the big issuers like USDC and stablecoin and Tether, which think that their formats are going to be used. And in the end of the day, where is it all going and where it's going to be held? It's not very clear. I think it's still crystallizing, and it's been for a very long time. It's interesting to see what's going to happen with them in the new administration. That is, I think, is going to move the line of where kind of what is legal and what is not legal and what compliances is and how things are viewed. But what if you went, and maybe you can agree or disagree, but last week, and the biggest event for fintech in the world, and in this case in EMEA in Amsterdam, they talk of everybody selling the infrastructure. They're saying that kind of the picks and shovels of this ecosystem. Where are the kind of the consumer solutions? Where are the how is it actually going to land into the hands of users? Everybody wants to provide you with the solution to build one of those, but nobody actually built one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was at Money 2020 last week as well. And yeah, there was a lot of talk about that, the picks and shovels, like selling shovels to gold diggers type of a vibe, like where we're really understanding the problem. There's not uniformity of it yet. It hasn't been solved. It's still kind of an open playing field from a consumer perspective. Lots of people really don't think about the complexities behind the scenes of money. Like right now, for most people, it's digital, particularly in areas like the UK, or we're just spending, using contactless predominantly. So shifting that technology from the current infrastructure to things like blockchain isn't really something the average consumer thinks about, but they just want speed, they want trust, and they want good user experiences. And so like with the CBDC conversation, one of the key elements that they think about is, what's the wallet that will hold that? How do they issue that? If they have a central bank digital currency, how do they get people to actually hold it? And one of the thoughts is like they would issue it through payroll, maybe into just particular sectors. But there's already been some confusion around that. If you look up like UK CBDCs on something like TikTok, there's these funny conversations because there's a max. They're thinking like maybe the max CBDC an individual can have is like £20,000. And that's just the max type of currency. They can still have more money than that, obviously, like, from the type of currency they currently hold. But it's all the same to them. But people will get confused and be like, oh my gosh, if I can only have a max of £20,000, how am I going to live? Yeah. And it's like, I want to save and invest. And people just like quite quickly, most people aren't thinking about the underpinnings of the financial systems. So it can be difficult to communicate. And so there's this question of like, how do you issue it? How do you communicate it? How do you help people understand what the new wallet solution is? So I think from an institutional perspective, as well as a government perspective, there's lots of opportunity in the world of stablecoin and of using blockchain to have a more efficient infrastructure, but there's still a long way to go for it.
It's, again, that fintech conference, the two biggest stands at it that spend the most money and were most visible were Visa and MasterCard. At a fintech conference, that the talk of the day is stable coins that's supposed to make things easier to pay with a wallet. With the Visas and MasterCard value proposition is not payments. It's not about paying. It's about fraud. They have the fraud infrastructure and they can catch people abusing the system. Something that is not even talked of or exists in the world of stable coins because the whole identity thing doesn't really exist. We don't know what we're paying for or who's paying for because it's all decentralized. So that's like a whole other bit that is not being explored at all or thought through. It's not just about the ease of payment. Like you have an Apple Wallet on your app. I don't know when it was launched years ago, and
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I was going to say that like the value, well, I mean, a couple things actually. So just last week, Circle went public. So speaking of picks and shovels, that's a great business model as it is right now without sort of more like regulators kind of and like governments getting involved. Right now, Tether and Circle have kind of like a duopoly in the space and they make tons of money through issuing stable coins, which has been cool to see. And then another one is like Stripe, great company. They acquired Bridge, which is a stablecoin infrastructure company. And I think one of the great things that they do, and maybe a pattern for more companies to think about, is really re-envisioning the entire like sort of experience using sort of stablecoin rails. So what I've seen a lot of like big companies and institutions do is like they'll think about stablecoins and crypto as like a point solution, whereas I don't really think the benefit really manifests itself until you really re-envision everything. So if you think about lending and borrowing and all of that, but then instead of just thinking like, well, how do you do it with stable coins? It's how do you do it like on chain and decentralized way? I think there's I think that's kind of what is inhibiting consumer adoption is number one is regulatory sort of like clarity. And then two, I think it's a lot of sort of like minimalist thinking or thinking that isn't re-envisioning the entire experience. So
there's also trust is a big issue, right? So we're already approaching over 50% of the world, digitally moving money around. But when it comes down to it, I guess the big banks where they'll end up versus the circles and all the cool fintechs will be trusted custodians. We will care about issuance. We will care about custody. And then we will work collaboratively with tech companies who will then do that end user app. But the trust thing is still a huge thing to think about. as it is going back to your Visa MasterCard point about sunsetting credit cards. Is there a plan for that? How's that going to work? How are we going to get that other 50% on board? But the world we're in right now, with US politics and everything that's going on, it has to happen as well. So regardless of whether we think the infrastructure is there or not, if China comes out tomorrow with their own fiat, even if it's not CBDC, then and people start using it for trade, then other countries are just going to have to play ball.
Yeah, I think there's also a problem. Like, who cares? Like, who cares about the digital wallet in the digital wallet panel, and who cares about digital wallet? But does the consumer care? If you were 20 years ago, and I would tell you that there's a wallet on your phone that you can pay with and you can buy stuff, you go like, oh, cool, that's a digital wallet. You have like 10 of those. PayPal has a wallet. Apple has a wallet. You can pay through Coinbase. There's so many other options. But again, nobody really engages in it in the way that we may be in financial services want them to engage with. So is it a problem looking for a solution? I don't know. I believe there's going to be something that will emerge that will grab that space. But at the moment, it's there's a lot of issues.
Cool. So yeah, speaking on what will emerge, one of the big use cases that people are really excited about these days is like agentic commerce. The idea being that you can sort of book travel or, I don't know, conduct any other type of business, but then do it digitally through digital wallets, primarily having some sort of an identity aspect to it, combined with, your funds and being able to do things on your behalf. So I'd love to get your all's thoughts on it. If it's not specifically around agentic commerce, there's also been platforms like Operator through OpenAI and others. Like, just curious what you all have seen on that yet. Is it there yet? Do we still have a long ways to go?
Has anyone here used Operator or Manus AI at all? Yeah. What do you think?
I've enjoyed it. It's been interesting to see how many things it can do, and also its massive implications. Like your imagination for what you might like it to do is greater.
What it can do, right? And also, would you trust it with your money?
No.
Exactly. So I think that's the big thing. We're playing around with Operator and Manus and all these really cool toys. When it comes down to it, would you be happy with it using your money?
Yeah, I think what we see more on the the enterprise side is you mentioned that travel example, and typically if let's say you got a travel site and you ask where should I go on holidays, right? It gives you a generic answer like you should go to Paris or you should go to New York. So you kind of have this RAG is obviously a really relevant way to be able to build out these models, but without context, you've just got uncontextualized candidates. So how we see businesses looking to try and evolve and adopt that to be able to create much more like personalized experiences, to be able to bring in user data, right? User information about their user preferences. So, what's someone doing on the app right now? What are some things that they've looked at? So you can be able to tailor and deliver that type of a personalized experience. And then the question is like, how do you do that at scale, like without a lot of like data engineering associated? So in order to do that, you need to be able to ingest data from different data sources, like, batch streaming in real time. You need to be able to transform that data to be able to create, signals that you can send to the models. You need to be able to join all that together, both offline for some development and also online for serving. And you need to be able to, join all that information together in real time to be able to create really great predictions. So that's kind of some of the challenges that we're seeing. And Tecton is a platform, and other like leading ML platforms, help to abstract away a lot of that kind of complexity to be able to improve these types of experiences and accelerate speed to market.
Got it. So speaking of like contextual data in Tecton in particular, is it primarily through sort of batch streaming pipelines? Is it also like vector databases and things like that? What do you?
Yeah, so we do have integrations with vector databases, so you can bring your own. And then we kind of see this world where features and things like embeddings are kind of treated as first class citizens, which we can support. And it's really a case of kind of getting to that point. We see the value Although there's a lot more value in information that's like really fresh, that's like, sub-second versus a minute or 2 minutes. But getting to that point is complex and difficult to manage at scale. We often see core common challenges. We interviewed over 300 different AI and ML teams, and we saw 4 common challenges occur. The first is online and offline data is typically managed separately, which creates things like training serving skew. You often have bottlenecks between data science and machine learning engineers that you have to re-implement data scientists' work. Scaling real-time and streaming ML is complicated. And then all of that has to be served, at ultra low latency. Like particularly in fintechs, we see a huge amount of, use case adoption for real-time and streaming with things like account takeover, transaction fraud, which are quite top of mind. And they have to be served, at hundreds of QPS in sub 20 to 100 milliseconds. So there's some of the kind of common themes that we see at Tecton and some of the problems that we're solving for, which we obviously support Coinbase with as well. So
yeah, we're happy customers on that. So yeah, I mean, speaking about like logging it, I mean, it's actually very interesting. So like with context, and then all of this sort of backend data, infrastructure that exists, OpenAI is one company who we've heard rumors of having like a login with OpenAI, login with ChatGPT, and so like their context combined with potentially WorldCoin integration or some sort of other type of stablecoin wallet is pretty powerful potentially. So,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think that's really when stuff gets interesting. And I think this is kind of tying it back to the AI summit is who's been hoovering customers? OpenAI. So nobody grew as fast as ChatGPT in the history of product ever. So if you think about the direction where things are potentially traveling is that the idea of the internet and how it's being used is shifting. So as soon as Google put the LLM response on top of the page and they added a tab that allows it to just dive into an LLM, they're reconfiguring how the internet is potentially going to work. So we could not have websites anymore. We could just engage with a potential AI as a pipe into everything. And then if somebody who hoovered up as many customers as OpenAI did, would they be interested in introducing commerce? Maybe. And agentic commerce? Maybe. And I totally take your point on trust. And the only thing I would say to challenge that is that the generation coming underneath us, the Gen Zs, they don't care about that much.
Yeah, they expect it.
Yeah, and they also don't care about switching. They don't care what they pay with. So there's a lot of research that show that they would pay with whatever if it's easier and faster. So if that platform starts to take central point, if somebody can introduce a wallet, it's potentially ChatGPT, or if Google kind of moves into that space as well, is that new entry point into internet and commerce and e-commerce, and is all commerce is going to be done through an agent that looks for you through MCP server level of inventory access. John Lewis is just going to provide you with the inventory through an MCP or whatever the technology is going to be, and the engagement with inventory in a physical store is not going to go through an e-commerce site anymore, and you're going to pay through digital means. I think this is like kind of tying it back together where it could go. That could be an interesting pathway.
Yeah. I recently was at a dinner with Microsoft's head of AI for finance, a guy named Mark Mueller. It was not Chatham House rules, so this is shareable. And it was really interesting. Part of the conversation ended up centering on digital commerce and agentic AI for payments. And we were talking about the need for a know your agent process, KYA to KYA, as agents start interfacing with each other because customers start interacting through something like Copilot or ChatGPT to do more than just query and summarize and, have the current kind of engagements that kind of take it a step further. And similarly, through the rest of financial services, that trust element that I think has been appropriate, been flagged as saying it's just trust that Gen Z has, that they just kind of assume it'll be there. But actually, we have to evolve our existing infrastructure, which is really about KYC for an individual, not for, an LLM. And so, or agentic AI. But I think it's really interesting. I see there's like one wave of agentic AI in the world of commerce and another kind of in retail banking and wealth management that's coming up. In commerce, I was watching Diary of a CEO yesterday with Stephen Bartlett, and he had this really interesting AI debate. And in it, he starts it by going on to, I don't even know which app it was, but it was an Agentic AI app. And he basically ordered water. So it's like, just use Uber Eats, use any of my like payment methods in my phone to order me like 3 things of water, whatever water you think is best. And like within a few minutes, like on the podcast, it like shows it in like on his app happening. And someone like comes in from Uber Eats and like delivers this water that he somehow just ordered through this simple query and an AI chatbot. So it was really fascinating. But at the same time, when we look at the world of like retail banking and wealth management, there's been this concept of money on autopilot for quite a long time. With the reality is like over the past 10 years, we've made it easy to access financial services. It's super easy to open an account, get insights into spending, see where your money is going, simply make payments. Stripe can be embedded into anything. That's great. But then the next wave of that is helping customers make better financial decisions. It's now super easy to open an index fund or an ISA or an ETF, but a lot of people don't know how to strategically invest. And that's an intelligence that AI can actually bring in to help you understand your finances based on what you want to do, what you can do next. But then the next part that Agentic AI is really good at is actually executing that. So it's saying, okay, now this is the financial plan you want to execute on with these different people. Maybe it's, like a VTI fund with Vanguard that you want to open that account. It can go out and actually on your behalf start to do these money movements for you in a way that wasn't previously possible. So I think there's this world of ease of use that customers have started to expect that's just gone to the next level. It's not just about account access, but it's about money movement that's now becoming possible.
It'd be interesting to know how many GPT queries are from Gen Zs asking about finance. Like how many people, use it as a financial coach. Yeah, I'm sure there's a thing there, but you kind of threw WorldCoin in a very small. But WorldCoin, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's another some Altman beast startup where they scan your retina to provide a payment method and a kind of identity method and a coin behind it. And when he launched it a few years ago, I was like, "Fuck, what a stupid idea." But now you kind of see. Maybe that's merging into kind of OpenAI and ChatGPT, and yeah, it's the idea of being able to connect to your identity to a physical element in a world where fraud is just about to exponentially grow. I think is a very interesting one, and again, like tying it back to the idea of what MasterCard and Visa's value is. And even Stripe, I heard in Stripe, they were saying they see 1 in every 3 credit cards they've seen before. Right. So they know that, they provide this layer of trust now in the same way that Visa and MasterCard do. So this is, WorldCoin kind of starts to make sense in this context.
And that it's not using voice because actually, one great thing was that people were thinking of interacting with their finances using easy conversation. But if your voice can be cloned, I get why he's gone for retina instead, Maybe I thought about the Johnny Ives thing might be glasses, but I've heard actually it could be a necklace. So, be interested to see where that goes.
Yeah. I mean, another thing that I just think is interesting on this topic is, so when I started my company last year, it's like all AI-driven wealth tech. And some of the feedback I got was that one of the key things financial advisors and private bankers do is a certain hand-holding during difficult times in the market to reassure people. There's just like a fear-based thing, and they think that AI couldn't handle that emotional side of it. And I was at this really interesting event yesterday. It was hosted by Sir Stephen Fry. It was like 100 people, and it was like the product director at DeepMind and some like really interesting folks. And one thing that came out that I hadn't properly appreciated is how emotionally intelligent AI is. It's not just intellectual. A lot of people are going to ChatGPT with queries that are around like emotional support and even to get help like writing emails and how to frame communications. And now it's actually a bit more emotionally intelligent than some people are. And it also, they were talking about how it actually can have a better bedside manner than some doctors, because it's not, maybe it can help with like the kind of scientific side of medicine, but it can't like hold someone's hand. But actually it's always quite empathetic. Like you talk to ChatGPT, it's a bit sycophantic as well. It's like, oh, amazing idea, great insights, or I'm really sorry to hear that. It'll use like emotional language. So that's where I think it's interesting. I think people are querying it for financial questions. They're using it for reassurance, for guidance, for education. And interestingly, it's not just doing the intellectual side, it's doing an emotional side. I don't think I necessarily predicted it would.
No.
Gemini's not as
well, maybe not all AI.
If you try using the different LLMs, you get different kinds of responses.
Yeah.
Some are positive, some are like, no, don't do that.
I just a piece of research, and unfortunately, I didn't prepare to quote it properly. But if you look online, you'll find that they did a piece of research on two text messaging conversations. So kind of like a Turing test with a messaging app was just texting, and people predominantly chose the LLM as the real human versus the human over and over and over again, because it's getting good at that. But the idea of, like, I think financial advice around AI is, if you think about kind of the crypto idea at a very big idea, is that all finance is code now, and it can be layered, and you add to that AI, and you can essentially grow wealth in like the whole idea of banking and how we interact with a savings account versus a credit account. All of that is artificial and based on kind of like the bank shipping its kind of organizational chart to the customer. So you're looking into that. If you kind of ignore the organizational chart of the bank and you think from the customer perspective, take crypto and AI and combine that, you should have a completely different financial product and ecosystem to engage with.
It's also hyper competitive as well. You've got a lot of people, I think, still bank with their core apps, but they use some of the digital native banks to look at their edge products, whether it's the ISAs or fixed rate savings accounts and all those types of things. So I think it's quite diversified as far as like how consumers are using these apps as well.
Totally. I was just gonna say, like, one company that hasn't come up yet, but is Apple, just because they've got a great wallet, they've got a lot of trust, they've got tons of devices, have a lot of context, but WWDC was the other day. It was kind of like a lukewarm reception, and I think people are still trying to figure out what their AI strategy is. So they could probably lean in heavily on agentic commerce at some point. So would love, well, first of all, give a big thanks to the panel.